Keeper of the Lost City's Everblaze, Chapter 23. "What are you doing?" Adeline asked from the doorway, making Sophie fumble and drop the scrolls. "Sorry, I didn't mean to sneak up on you." "It's okay," Sophie told her, hoping she wasn't in trouble for searching Adeline's office. "I just felt this might be a good place to look for Jolie's old school things." "Oh, I bet you're right. This is where I usually stuff anything I don't know what to do with." Adeline clapped her hands, making an enormous crystal chandelier light the room, and reveal about 100 more trunks that had been hidden in the shadows. "I've really let things get out of control in here, haven't I? Hazard of being a conjurer, I guess. It's too easy to snap my fingers and make anything I don't want to think about disappear." She opened a nearby trunk and pulled out a garland of dangling diamonds and sparkling amethysts and iridescent flowers that looked like they were woven into fairy wings. "Decorations for the wedding," she explained quietly. "I'd been making everything myself to ensure it would be perfect. But now—" She crushed a fragile flower in her hand, showering the ground with sparkling crumbs. Sophie was still struggling to find out how to respond when Adeline cleared her throat and asked, "So have you found anything from Jolie?" "One trunk so far, but it's all older stuff. It did have this, though." Sophie showed her the matchmaker's scroll. "How come I couldn't find Brant's name?" Adeline looked away, taking several deep breaths before she whispered, "Because Brant and Jolie were a bad match." Sophie frowned. "So, what, if you don't marry someone on your list, it's a bad match?" "Of course. How did you think it worked?" "I don't know. I guess I just figured you got a list that said, like, do not marry these people. And if you chose to marry them anyway, it was a bad match. I suppose that would make it a lot easier. But the only good matches are the ones the matchmakers arrange. That's why you can request up to 5 lists. Though most of us find our match on the first. Grady was my number 3, and I was his number 7. Sophie couldn't help wondering who'd been their number 1s, as Adeline moved to her side and took the scrolls. Adeline traced her fingers along the names, shaking her head sadly. Some of these options seemed like such a wrong fit, and Jolie went back every month for a new list, hoping each time it would somehow have Brant's name. But we all knew he wouldn't be on one. Brant never manifested a special ability. Wait, people without special abilities can't get married? No, they can, but they're only matched with other talentless. That seems really unfair. Brant and Jolie thought so too. The whole point of matchmaking system is to ensure the strongest genetic potential for our offspring, and I know that probably seems strange, given your upbringing, but you have to consider that there are a lot fewer of us than humans, and we live a very long time without physically aging. Left to our own devices, it would be far too easy to end up forming an attachment to a distant relative. Ew. Exactly. Varying the gene pool is essential. The matchmakers also ensured that different talents and skin colors and body types are all mixed. And, of course, they also work hard to consider our own personal tastes and preferences. They receive centuries of training before they're appointed to their position. You'll see how extensive the questionnaire is when you're old enough to register. And until then, it's best to try to keep an open mind. Sophie definitely didn't miss the part about her needing to register for matchmaking. But that wasn't the prickly piece of weird her mind wasn't ready to wrap around. So she asked, "What do you mean by an open mind?" "Just try not to form too strong of any attachments to anyone until you receive your lists." She was looking at Sophie's ring as she said it. Sophie hid her hand behind her back. Adeline pretended not to notice as she crouched beside the trunk of wedding stuff and started sifting through. Jolie was in love with Brant, pretty much from the moment they met, she said, lifting out a huge knot of fancy garland and trying to untangle it. She was 6, and we were in a pet store in Atlantis. And they both wanted the same gremlin. Brant offered to let her have it, but Jolie suggested they share. And that was all it took. Instant best friends, completely inseparable. For years, Grady and I watched them, hoping it would work out. Brant's family was also in the nobility, and we had no genetic connections. Surely they would end up a match. But then Jolie manifested as a conjurer, and Brant stayed in ability detecting. Poor boy tried so hard to manifest. His parents even hired extra tutors, and he'd worked with them for hours, trying to trigger something, anything, but it never worked. And when it was time to register for the match, we all knew what would happen. Adeline crunched more flowers off the garland. But they were still getting married, Sophie reminded her. They were, and Grady and I struggled with it at first, not because we didn't adore Brant, she added quickly, going back and sorting through the trunk. I'd just seen what my sister went through when she married Kessler. All the whispers and the stares and the friends who started avoiding them. Bad matches don't happen very often. So when they do, they draw lots of attention. And for years after, Jolene was afraid to have the children, worried that something would turn out wrong with them. That's why Dex is your age, and the triplets are even younger. Fortunately, they're perfect and healthy, and I'm so happy to hear that Dex manifested an ability. That will make everything so much easier. Something about Adeline's smile made Sophie very aware again of the ring on her finger. Ah, here it is, Adeline said quietly, lifting out a fragile headpiece. Swirls of gold and silver set with amethyst and pearls and diamonds, and holding it up in the light. Grady and I gave this to Jolie the day we finally consented to the wedding. We'd watched her yell at the matchmakers enough to know that there would be no changing her mind. She loved Brant so much. But we still had one condition. We asked her to take the elite levels, even though Brant couldn't be with her. That explained why Brant had written Jolie so many love letters while she'd been in the elite towers, and probably why he talked about feeling unworthy of her. She was so mad at us, Adeline whispered, accusing us of trying to separate them so they'd fall out of love. But I told her that this was what my parents had asked of Kessler and Jolene, to prove to others, but mostly to themselves, that they belonged together. If they couldn't survive 2 years of separation, how could they survive a lifetime of scorn? So she took us up on the challenge, said she'd prove to everyone that she wasn't making a mistake. And she definitely did. Adeline turned away, trying to hide the tears that had slipped down her cheeks. Sophie kneeled beside her, wrapping Adeline in a hug. Adeline held on tight. So tight, it was a little hard to breathe. Then she released her hold, clearing her throat several more times before she dropped her arms and said, I'm sorry, we're not here to dredge up sad memories. She stuffed the circlet back into the trunk, slamming it shut with a sort of finality. We have more important things to find. Where do you want me to start looking? Sophie pointed to a row of trunks. They both set to work. But even with Sandra's help, they barely made it through the third of the room by dinner time. Adeline conjured up 2 plates of soggy purple leaves, which tasted uncannily like fried chicken, and they kept working while they ate. They were just reaching the halfway point when Grady poked his head through the doorway. Whoa, I can see the cloud of dust you guys are making from all the way downstairs. You're home, Sophie said, standing up to give him a hug. She froze when she got a better look at him. Thorny twigs were tangled in his hair, and his cape was caked with dried mud. But the 4 thin scratches on his left cheek were the most troubling, especially since one was still bleeding. What happened? Adeline said, sending several streamers crashing to the floor as she stood to inspect his injury. Nothing, Grady promised. That doesn't look like nothing, Adeline said, touching the skin around the wound, making Grady wince. I'm fine, I promise. I've just been in the Dwarven capital, trying to help them solve a mystery. What kind of mystery? Sophie asked, taking a step back as she realized his cape was caked with something other than mud, and whatever it was did not smell good. I don't know if mystery's the right word, Grady said, blotting at his cheek with a dirty sleeve. It's more like a situation. What's the situation? Sophie pressed when he didn't continue. Grady stared at the red stain on his cape. A large group of dwarves seemed to have disappeared.